Welcome to Rise with AI, a podcast that spotlights trailblazers in e-learning and professional training, inspiring you to reach new heights, create impact, build your vision, and empower others. I'm your host, and today we're joined by Tanarra Schneider, founder of Rebel 75, a consultancy dedicated to making work more human through tiny rebellions and safe to fail learning environments. With 30 years of experience in leadership development and design innovation, Tanarra has led teams in corporate and consulting roles, helping organizations embrace change authentically. She's currently relaunching her social media presence and planning a live community event to connect leaders all around. So Tanarra, it's an honor to have you. Let's start with a fun question. You have
Okay.
described yourself as someone who's always questioned the status quo. So what's one early moment in your career where you actually embraced that rebellious spirit and saw it pay off?
That's a really good question. I think there's a couple, but one that always comes to mind is I walked into, I'd been walked into helping a team with a merger. It was a big merger acquisition with the company that I was with. And my team and I were sent in to really sort of overhaul the systems that they were working with. And we were given like this beautiful space to sit in this fantastic office. And I immediately realized that was somebody's old boss's office, like an executive who maybe had been let go through this merger. Instinct was absolutely not. We are going to sit with the people we're working with. We're going to step back. We're not here to tell them what to do. We're here to figure out how to work alongside them and make this partnership work. And so stepping back out of a space of authority and in space of collaboration was probably one of the first big moments that felt like rebellion to me because I knew what I was expected to do and I had to do something else.
Amazing. So throughout your 30 years in corporate and consulting to founding Rebel 75, what was also the defining moment that actually pushed you to start your own firm and also focus on making work more human?
Oh, that's a long story, but Rebel came to be because I had just gone through probably my third big merger and acquisition. You'll find M&A as a thread through some of this, but and I consistently saw places where we were just not counting on human connection. We weren't working to make work better for people. We were just looking at the systems and the dollars and everything on paper. And so when I had the opportunity to leave, they were laying a bunch of us off, and I just sort of raised my hand and said, "Can I go?" And doing that gave me the headspace to figure out how I wanted to contribute to the work environment going forward. I didn't want to leave it in the sense of like running away and never touching it again. But I knew I needed to do something different to build the workplaces that I wanted to see and be a part of in the past and in the future.
Yes, and you mentioned that when you actually work with an organization or a team, you're actually there not to really just disrupt, but to actually form even collaboration, right? To help them move the needle. So you have really introduced the concept of tiny rebellions to drive changes. Can you share a story of tiny rebellion that made a big impact for a team or organization that you have worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So one of the things that we talk a lot about is effective meetings, right? Like meetings are so like that we love to joke that meeting could have been an email, except a lot of times meetings can't be emails. We actually have to engage with people. And so thoughtful design, just small tweaks on critical moments in our day make a huge difference in terms of how we understand what people are getting from that interaction. So worked with a team to redesign a core meeting that they have every other week that drives their business forward. But it wasn't about the meeting agenda entirely, like the things that we need to talk about. It was how are we going to talk about them? We flipped it and we said, when you start the meeting, come in and talk about how the topics you're going to approach feel. Are we worried about this decision? Do we not have enough information? How do we feel about what we're about to engage in? And how do we need to be with one another in this next 90 minutes? Opening that up creates vulnerability. It gives people a chance to say, I don't feel comfortable enough yet to make a decision. Then we get to shape how we talk about the topic in the meeting. We get to shape how we are creating space and patience for somebody who maybe hasn't digested or needs a little more time or has a really strong opinion about something, rather than assuming everybody's on the same page. And just that small tweak, talking about how we feel about what we're about to discuss, has changed the tenor of how they come into their meetings now. They just come in and they're like, we need to be better prepared for next week's meeting. So I'm going to send stuff out in advance because they're aware of how they're now coming into the space. Small thing. It's a tiny thing, but centering feelings in the workplace is a pretty big rebellion for a lot of people. We're always, feelings don't belong at work. Actually, they do. They do.
How do you actually let the leaders or even I would say the leaders are mostly the driving force of the organization, right? And how do you, for those who might not be so in tune like with their feelings, how do you actually evoke that out of them and or even to share that across?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things. So I talk about two things in my practice. One is internal alignment, and the other one is external expression. So with leaders, especially leaders who feel like that is a hard bridge to cross, right? Sharing your feelings, I'll actually start with a one on one with them. And we'll talk about what are you giving and what are you not giving intentionally and why, right? So I'm bringing my leadership presence and my knowledge and my wisdom, and that's great. What else are you not bringing? Afraid to say I don't know? Are you afraid to say I don't feel good about how we're working, y'all? Like, are you not giving curiosity, right? What's holding you back from doing this? And so we try to spend a little bit of time just unlearning some behaviors that aren't constructive, because a lot of people were raised in a space where vulnerability is talked about but not ever really demonstrated, right? We talk about empathy, we talk about openness, but we don't really give people the keys to that. We don't tell them how to do it. So my goal with leaders is always to model it and help them do it in a place that feels safe, and then to just give them one thing to do. Okay, so the next time you go into a meeting, do something a little bit different. Just be curious. How's everyone doing today? Or share a story of when something didn't work and how it felt, and just give yourself that one moment to open up with your team and see how it's received, right? It's never going to be that all in moment that like just completely change is so hard for people, and it's usually not genuine because it doesn't stick, right? You do a whole bunch of stuff and it feels real hard, so then you retreat, which is why I talk about tiny rebellions. What's one thing you can do tomorrow? Just one. Pick one.
So you touch on the leaders also being curious, and I think most of the time the feelings really is about being also that you have what you want to make sure that you also come across as genuine and also authentic. So how does a leader actually stay authentic in while also navigating the corporate expectations?
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about the concept of Rebel and Rebel 75 is that rebellion isn't just about, like you said, it's not just about like throwing everything out or blowing everything up. I'm a firm believer in you have to know the system to challenge the system, right? So living within that corporate space, like what it expects from you, what it wants from you as a leader, understanding that, and then really having a handle on your values as a leader is critical, right? We talk about organizational values, but I think a lot of times as leaders, we don't know really what we value. And we think we have to throw that out sometimes to match up with corporate expectations. And one of the things that I do with the leaders I work with is we actually start out with a conversation about values. But I learned a beautiful lesson from a friend, which is I don't tend to come at that from like, tell me what you value. He asks his clients sometimes, like, what makes you mad? What rubs you the wrong way? And it's such a brilliant way to enter the conversation because it gives you a chance to actually be like, well, I hate when people XYZ. I hate when people just send emails and don't think about the time of day. I'm like, okay, well, why does that rub you the wrong way? Right? Learning those things from brilliant people around me. So now I tend to enter that conversation with what pisses you off? What don't you like? Why does it do that, right? And you get to ask why. There's this concept of five whys. Like, ask why 5 times. Why does that bother you? Well, why does that bother you? Okay, so maybe there's a value that's being rubbed up against. And if you as a leader understand, I value these 3 to 5 things really strongly, and my organization values these, how, the question isn't do I, it's how do I live my values in a way that also drives impact for this organization. Sometimes when those two things can't come together, that might be a sign that maybe that's not the right place for you, right? So you get a couple of things out of that. But if you can lead from a values driven place, you may not be a loud leader. Not all leadership is loud, and it doesn't have to be. If you value quiet introspection, share that with your team. Hey, I'm more of a quiet thinker. I like to take my time. I know some of you process really fast. How do we meet in the middle? I need you need reaction from me. How do we meet? Because, right, then you get to have these wonderful conversations about here's what we all bring to this system, to this team, to this organization. And I now understand, oh, right, it needs time to digest that thing. I've got a perspective. So I might say, here's how I'm thinking about this. Why don't you take your time, digest it, and then let's connect tomorrow so I can hear from you rather than expecting you to respond to me right now. You may not have thought through it or be able to process it that quickly.
Very interesting that you point out that to really understand the value, you understand what pisses you off. And at the same time, once you also know the value, you find work more enjoyable, right? And also you get less pissed off.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so
And you know how to
amazing.
set boundaries, right? Like it helps you set those boundaries and be like, oh, I'm not going to internalize that. That's not my value.
Yes, and you get to decide how you also show up and also communicate. Learning to say no is also one of the space. I love that because you mentioned about creating safe to fail environments. Can you talk more about this? What kind of key lesson you actually learned that
Yeah.
about this fostering these environments that you shared with others?
Yeah, so really early in my career, I had the good fortune to work for a company that created safe to fail training environments for big systems like your finance system, your HR system. And so you could go in and try out entering data, doing things, relating it, but it wasn't in the actual system. And so I have translated that over time to how do we
Mm.
prototype ways of working in a safe to fail environment, right? You can workshop that stuff with your team. Hey, we want to try something new. Let's try an experiment around how we intake projects and
Mm.
how we assign them and move the work forward. Well, what does that
Mm.
look like? Okay, I don't know. Let's map it out one day. Let's just sit in a room real quick. We'll just do like a table landscape and like move little play people through the process. Well, what could possibly happen that could go wrong? Let's play that scenario through. Use a real project, talk through it, right? And
Mm.
then you can go prototype. You can actually go experiment with it. I'm a huge fan of live experiments, which is why I talk about tiny
Mm.
rebellions, because if you overhaul an entire project process
Mm.
and it tanks and you're doing it with a client that's high risk or in a on a project or a product that you're creating that's high risk, that's hard. But if you take
Mm.
one piece of it and say, you know what, this is a piece that's given us a lot of trouble, this
Mm.
one moment in this process. Let's talk through how we think it's going to work. Okay, our rebellion for the next month is we're going to do this piece differently. As a team, we all commit that instead of sending emails, we're all going to jump on a Slack huddle. We're going to ask our questions live, and then we're going to trust the decision, and then we're just going to go. Just a
So
small thing. It's a small piece of the puzzle.
so immediate testing.
Immediate testing. Michael Bungay Stanier talks about this idea of like bullets over cannonballs, right? Like you toss a cannonball into something, you're going to destroy it, right? And I don't love the warfare analogy, but like a little tiny hole or a little tiny change versus a massive change is something you can implement and you can see the results, and then you can say, you know what, that's good enough for us to stick with it. What's the next piece, right? Because they have tiny ripple effects too, right? Those little things you do can have tiny ripple effects that you don't expect. And some of them are good and some of them are go, oh, we created a problem over there. Let's fix that one next. But if you don't know and you don't try, then the pile of stuff to fix or to change just gets bigger and bigger.
Interesting. I actually had a talk with Genesis X. She is also designing, and really her whole message is about the people-centric approach. But I think also apart from having that room for innovation and creativity, like you mentioned also, the organization also should allow to also have test labs moment. So then also tiny amount, it adds up to really huge monument success as well. And if you are able to just experiment and test a little bit, you wouldn't wait until there's really a big thing that blown out of proportion. So I love that what you just shared. And for yourself, Tanarra, transiting from corporate to also innovation design in Rebel 75, what has been some strategies that you have actually used to reposition yourself to attract new clients?
Yeah. I think I'm fortunate in that the positioning for Rebel 75 and looking at my overall brand really marries my entire 30 years of experience, right? Design and innovation and organizational design, learning, culture, all those things. But what I've had to do is really think about the anchors of my story, right? And so I'm learning at the same time how to market myself. I've worked in marketing agencies. I always had a brilliant team of writers and creatives and folks that I was working with. So as an entrepreneur, you're trying to figure out how to do a lot of it yourself and what you really need to hire out. But I have been learning how to use, Claude or other AI tools to like synthesize things so that I can see the patterns and like really get into it and then go write it myself in a way that feels very, connected to me. And it's hard for me because I'm a big centered human interaction person. So working with AI has not been something I've come to easily or lightly. I'm also still really cautious about it. I don't let it write things for me wholesale. So learning how to integrate those things has been a big one as I think about how I rebrand myself, but also getting crystal clear because when you've been a consultant and you've done so many things, you can do so many things. And so I've had to really get clear on what's the value that I bring from my lived experience to my clients and potential clients and to the conversation around human-centered organizations and team culture and leadership development that feels like I'm not stepping into something just for the sake of it, but that it really does come from a place of genuine care and connection.
So it sounds like even while you are building your clientele right now and also your positioning, authenticity is also an important message that you want to bring across. So what have been the some of the most successful approach that you actually find work for you while staying authentic in building that network?
Yeah, it's a really good question because it's hard. You can get lost in it. So there's a couple things. One, I don't I have not yet done a bunch of cold reach outs to people. I'm not sending blanket emails asking for meetings. It's just not me. I am very relationship based. So I am connecting with people that I've worked with before and repositioning myself a little bit, explaining what I'm doing now, which also helps me pressure test if what I'm doing feels genuine, right? Because folks who've known me in one way, even though Rebel didn't exist when we worked together, they look at it and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like this feels very much like you. I understand why you would go and do this work. And that makes me feel really good about the work I'm doing. It makes me feel like I'm doing something that's purpose built, right? That's really purposeful, especially at 50 years old. When you're building something new at 50 years old, it's the thing that's probably going to carry me until I decide not to do anything anymore. So I want it to be something that I can grow genuinely. The other thing too is scale. I know everybody wants to scale and everybody wants to scale fast. And I've had lots of people talk to me about evergreen content and recording, modules so I can sell them. I would be surprised if that ever happened for me because it's not that I don't want to offer the content out. It's that I want to build a community of people who can learn from each other if I'm going to do that. And until I have that space and that support and that safe to fail environment where you're not stewing on it by yourself, I'm not going to put something out that I believe puts somebody on an island alone to learn because I don't think that's what this work is about.
Is that why you are also building a network to connect leaders?
Yeah, it is. Um, because I think I know for a fact my success over 30 years didn't come from sitting in a room by myself. There's not one thing that I've ever done that I have done alone, no matter what. Even building Rebel, the laundry list of people behind Rebel's existence, they are the reason that I do this. They are the reason I'm able to be articulate about what I believe about leadership and about teams. So building a community of people to connect together, to learn and to see somebody model something you've never done before, or to hear how somebody else is wrestling with an experiment that they're doing, what's working, what's not. That is so valuable because rebels don't act by themselves, right? There's no solo rebel out there making massive change. They're always connected to a community of people that they're doing it with and for.
Brilliant. I love that you also credit to the team of people behind your current success, because no business strive just by one person. It's always a team of dedicated staff, and also even the clients, everyone that we work together. And that's why human relationship and connectivity, it's also very important. Look into technology, right? You mentioned you have used some AI tool for your content creation, and also ClipUp, I think the other time for project management. What other technologies have you actually find that is helping you to move that needle? And are you looking to for any other technologies that you might actually implement in your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a stream of things, right? You're in when you're doing this kind of work, there's always tools that you need. So I use a suite of different things. Like, let's be honest, I use Canva pretty regularly to create templates and things for workshops and to put content out there. I use Taplio right now to play around with my LinkedIn posts and presence. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with all of that. I mean, I'm building my YouTube channel. I use Riverside to capture video, and we'll use it for the upcoming podcast that'll launch sometime in the next few months. So there's lots of pieces of the puzzle. Perplexity for research sometimes, at least to get me started. And I love anything that gives me source material, because I am a firm believer in going back to the source material, even with a synopsis that I can read. And for the rest of it, like, ClickUp is a big one for me, like you said, and then there's your basic sort of business tool suites out there. But that's kind of where it lives right now. It's figuring out the flow of content into those things, and then ultimately, I spend a lot of time just writing. Right. I use Zoom for some of my connections and team calls, and then I do some coaching through a platform called Circles. And there's two different versions. There's the community circle group, but there's actually a company called Circles that has this beautiful connection platform that I use too. So technology's everywhere. Like, I mean, I have a tech background, so I'm going to embrace technology, but always in support of human connection and work with actual live people.
Mm. Are there any tools that you recommend for actually connecting with a client or client engagement?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I would say if you're doing client facing work, be a little bit flexible about your tool set. So if your clients feel really comfortable using a platform, like I would have a couple in your pocket. So, Zoom, Google Meet, that kind of stuff. One that I've engaged with recently because of my client portfolio is actually called practice.do, which I'm really liking. It's a client management tool, but it's also something where my clients can schedule time with me. I can share resources with them really easily. There's a chat feature. And then we can also see, like, we can set goals up together. And we can also track things like, how many sessions have you missed? Where are you in terms of like honoring your commitment to yourself? Yes, it's to me, but let's be real. I get paid, but are you honoring your commitment to yourself for your development? So that's really great. I would say there's a couple out there for people who are um, like Signal. I really like Signal Chat, especially for my clients who are dealing with highly confidential work and need to chat, because I make myself available for my individual clients who need to chat. So I keep Signal channels open as well, so that they can message and feel secure in what they're sharing. So it's a little bit of a unique business in that way. And then things like Miro, I love a good like communal board space for people to actually design their flow of work, design routines together in a collaborative space. And then they have that. They can go back to and be like, oh, this moment didn't work. We need to look at that. And Miro is doing some interesting stuff, integrating AI and some other tools into their space too.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for extensive list of tech tools that we can also use.
Yeah.
And I would love to also hear from you what are some of your primary goals for the next 6 to 12 months, especially with your social media relaunch, live community event, and so many more.
Yeah. Um, I think there's a couple goals. Some are very much entrepreneur type goals, like being really consistent with my social media posting and blog posting. There's a backlog of stuff that's been written that needs to get cleaned up and posted. Figuring out that cadence is actually a really big goal for me. I haven't quite nailed that yet. Um, and the other one is launching this podcast and the community. They'll launch probably around the same time, so they are in support of one another, the community likely just before, so that we start to build up a space where people can engage. But those two things, I think the podcast and the community are a really big piece of it. And that's probably the next 6 months to get those really into a place where they're ready to go. I will be honest, I thought I was going to write a book first. I think the book will come second to those. But all of them are in the works at the same time. The book is just going to take a back seat for a minute to some really great client work that's coming up and the podcast and community work. Yeah. 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 There's a couple ways to find me. So one, rebel75.com is actually the easiest place. The newsletter link, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, that will also be the waitlist for the community. I'll get information out probably in a couple of months. We're doing the branding work around the community, and I don't want to launch it just yet, even quietly. I'm really excited about it. So I think those places. And then LinkedIn, you can always find me on LinkedIn and Blue Sky.
Beautiful. So to wrap up this podcast, I have 3 rapid questions to actually ask you. So Tanarra, just answer with the first thought that came into mind. All right? Are you ready for that?
I am. Let's go.
First question, what's one tiny rebellion any leader can try tomorrow to make their workspace more human?
Ask your team, what are you not getting from me that you need?
Second question, if you could have a mentor guide your journey, who would it be and why?
Michael Bungay Stanier, because I love the work that he's doing around change. It's incredible.
And last question, what's one leadership book or resource you recommend to everyone?
Oh, it was right here. Simple Habits for Complex Times by Jennifer Garvey Berger. Yes,
Oh,
Simple Habits for Complex Times.
simple habits for complex times. Thank you so much. So that's all for today's episode of Rise with AI. A huge thank you to Tanarra Schneider for sharing her insights on making work more human through tiny rebellions and safe to fail environments. So listeners, if this episode inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversation with leaders in e-learning and professional training. Until next time, keep reaching, impacting, scaling, and empowering. See you guys next time.